Hi there, I am the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit and for the soul. And it's titled, "The winds of grace are always blowing, but you have to raise the sail." I have two friends. Both of these friends, and they're very good friends of each other. They're both writers, primarily comedy writers. And I was chatting with one of them the other day about life and everything, the things we have known and experienced in our lives, and the more deeper and spiritual aspects of life, you might say too. We were talking about the gifts and the talents that folk have, as well as the other traits that people have. Some of the more difficult aspects of life that perhaps some of us have to live with, well, all of us in some ways, and some of the burdens that some folks have to live with and that others don't, that some have a much more privileged life than others. You may say this about my two friends, actually. And as we were walking and talking and just enjoying the day while Molly played in the park, I said something to my friend that could easily have been taken the wrong way. I said that our mutual friend had a special gift, something I suspect that she was born with, this gift for writing. And then I said that my friend that I was walking with was talented, very, very talented, but that the other friend was gifted. There's a subtle difference, I guess. Now, what was interesting was that he didn't really disagree or take offence at that, actually. He kind of, after a while, agreed with me and made a joke with her about it later. Now, what is particularly wonderful, though, about these two friends is how wonderfully well they work together, perhaps better together than alone. Her gift and his talent combined together create wonderful gifts for the whole world to share in. So many people anyway, including myself before I even knew them. I didn't know this, didn't know what they were creating. And I think they're becoming even more creative now in this stage of their lives. Now, of course, both of my friends' giftedness and talents are not all that they are. And there's something I've noticed about particularly gifted people, is that gifted people can often be cursed with other challenges in life that perhaps most others don't have to deal with. Some of the greatest, most talented people, gifted people have had real struggles in other areas of life. I don't know if that's that these things run hand to hand or what. I was talking with another friend the other day who is a deeply gifted singer, beautiful voice. They were once a singer-songwriter, but they gave up that part of their life. We were talking about singing and the blessings and the curses of having perfect pitch. A person with perfect pitch, hard to say that, isn't it? A person with perfect pitch can hear anything that is just ever so slightly out of tune. And that this can be very grinding and irritating on their ears. I know I get frustrated in myself when I'm singing if anything is just slightly awry. Often is when you sing a cappella, actually. I am very sensitive myself to sound. I really struggle with karaoke singing. As terrible singing, which is often the big joke of karaoke, actually really causes me a lot of pain to listen to. And unfortunately, I cannot hide the pain when I'm listening to somebody who is actually, truly tone deaf. And very, very few people in the world are truly tone deaf, but some are. And I would suspect just as many people as are tone deaf, truly tone deaf, as those who have perfect pitch. Most people are somewhere in between. Most people can sing, actually. Well, they can at least be taught to sing if they can hear. But some people just can't hear. And of course, most people, when listening to others who get slightly off beam, don't get so disturbed or cringe or feel as uncomfortable, a bit like holding cotton wool as the likes of myself can when something is out that something that's not discernible to most ears. I do have one friend who a while ago, I heard doing karaoke, who truly is tone deaf. I have never heard a greater murdering of Viva Las Vegas than my friend from about 18 months ago. I've never heard anything so utterly out of tune and out of time, for that matter, really. Just the occasional burst into Viva Las Vegas. It was hilarious, really. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen, actually. Didn't hurt my ears, actually. It was just funny and memorable. And actually, we were both laughing about this at another mutual friend's 40th birthday celebrations quite recently. So much fun. I love to sing. I love all kinds of singing as well, actually. And at the moment, I'm enjoying listening to the birds as I wake in the morning all around me where I live. And of course, you may have heard me talk about my favourite songsmith, my favourite bird of all, the blackbird that used to live on my roof here. He sang to me and I sang to him. He raised my voice and I attempted to raise his. He was, of course, the greatest singer out of the two of us. His eroism was the perfect gift, and perhaps the greatest grace, or one of the greatest graces of my life, to listen to that blackbird and to sing to him, and then for him to sing back to me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. How sweet the sound that blackbird was. My ears feels like a grace some days. The things I hear with my ears, my external ears, and the ears of my heart saves me so many times from so many things. Fills me with joy, with blessings, with love. But sometimes it causes deep pain too. The blessings and curses of choosing life. I have recently been gifted the beautiful grace of conducting and attending the wedding of both a good friend and, of course, our youngest brother. They were wonderful, wonderful experiences. And while I was conducting my friend's wedding just last week, I was taken back to another friend's wedding from a few years ago. This wedding was held in an Anglican church, and obviously I wasn't allowed to take the full service, but I was invited to give a blessing at the end, and also during the service to sing a version of that classic hymn, Amazing Grace, and to do so a cappella. Something I've done on many, many occasions over the years, at special occasions, weddings and other occasions, and of course heartbreaking funerals. To this day, I don't know how I have sang by gravesides to those that I have loved with all my heart. I suspect that was given to me by pure grace. I was just a vessel to sing those songs, not for me, but for others. Although it blessed me as I stood there in excruciating pain, utterly broken by grief. But grace held me as I sang those words for me and for others. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Amazing Grace has become a classic hymn as it has grown in incredible popularity over the years. Some of the words I find challenging. I have to admit, I'm not sure I accept the full theology there. But it's a piece of music, especially when I sing it myself, that sends a shiver down my spine. I actually personally prefer it unaccompanied. I think it has a real power and reverence when just sung straight from the human body, sung a cappella. Of course, that's not an easy thing to do. It's a grace itself. Amazing Grace has been described as a classic. David Tracy claimed that classics are those texts, events, images, persons, rituals and symbols which are assumed to disclose permanent possibilities of meaning and truth. I think Amazing Grace fulfills these requirements. And it's been doing so for over 200 years. It's quoted in Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was adapted by the Cherokee Native Americans during their forced migration, known as the Trail of Tears. It carries people through agony. It became, and it still does to this day, a favourite of the civil rights movement in America too. Amazing Grace is usually sung to the hymn tune New Britain, and it's been recorded by a rich diversity of artists, including the Reverend J.M. Gates, Judy Collins, the Royal Scottish Dragoon Guards, Aretha Franklin, Kylie Minogue, Joan Baez, and it was even played by Mr. Scott on the pipes at Mr. Spock's funeral in the film Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And I recall a really powerful version being sung by President Obama as he suddenly burst into a rendition while delivering the eulogy at the funeral of Clementa C. Pinckney, who had been the pastor of the church in Charleston, the scene of a horrific mass shooting. As he sang these words, he shed tears. Surely that was a moment of pure grace. Amazing Grace keeps on surfacing and resurfacing in a variety of forms, both religious and secular, and across the generations. And there seems little doubt that it will continue to do so on and on and on. Amazing Grace. How sweet, how sweet, how sweet the sound. So I've been hearing a lot about grace recently. Quite a few friends have talked about it, and they don't always mean the same thing. So what do we mean when we talk about grace? Well, like so many other spiritual language and spiritual terminology, it means different things to different people. The Sufi mystic Rumi wrote, "Something opens our wings. Something makes boredom and hurt disappear. Someone fills the cup in front of us. We taste only sacredness." And I think that someone or that something, I believe this is grace, which isn't a thing in the sense that we understand a being or a thing. It's an essence, it's something that's in life, alive. I call that grace. You might call it something else. When I speak of grace, I mean that's something that exists beyond the confines of ourselves. That's something more that makes life real, special, makes life alive, the aliveness of life. That's something that exists beyond our individual efforts, that make our efforts almost effortless. I have noticed that when I live in a graceful kind of state, life does indeed seem effortless. There's nothing weighing me down. Indeed, when life seems a slog or a struggle, it's precisely then I feel blocked off from the grace that's in everything, that surrounds me, that fills me, that's in everything. Grace, you see, seems to exist in the spaces of life. Therefore, when I'm blocked, it seems that there are no spaces where grace can thrive and live. To live in a graceful state is to trust in that which exists in those spaces and to allow it to energize our lives. Over the years, I've learnt to trust in this when the hard and the dark times have struck. It is grace that keeps me moving forward. Grace is the wow of life that can energize us if we would but trust in it. It is grace that gives us a sense of belonging to life itself. When I live in grace, I am fully a part of life, and I am so alive. Grace, of course, doesn't just have religious connotations, it has secular ones too. We can be given a period of grace with regard to payments or goods procured. We can be in someone else's good grace, meaning we're in someone's good books. We have gained that person's favour. We might compliment a person by saying they are graceful in a way they hold themselves, or gracious in the way that they act with others. In music, a composer may add grace notes. Those are added extras that are not essential but may add an artistic flourish to the piece. Getting the picture, what grace is? That bonus, that extra. Now, of course, classically speaking, the grace of God is a freely given gift of the Spirit that is unearned and undeserved, something that comes to us from beyond ourselves. You can't touch it, but you can know it. You could say that grace is a favour, or perhaps it's a fortune that comes to us unbidden. It does not come because we have done anything to deserve it, or not deserve it for that matter. It just comes anyway. The part we play is in recognising it, and when it comes, to make the most of what it offers. Life itself is probably the ultimate of graces. Think about it. We did absolutely nothing to deserve the gift of life itself, in all life's joys and sufferings, in all life's blessings and curses. Of course, our parents probably played a role, but we ourselves did nothing. So life is the ultimate grace, the ultimate free gift. When I think of my two friends, the gifted writer and my other friend who has perfect pitch, these were gifts that I believe that they were simply born with. Yes, they have nurtured those gifts, they have developed those gifts, but I suspect mostly they are simply gifts that they were born with. They had to do the things that they did at times in their lives. It's something in them that compels them, but something that was given to them freely. They did nothing to deserve them, shall we say, or not deserve them for that matter. Grace is something you can't avoid, I think. Even if you don't always recognise it, you can't really avoid it. It's there. But there is a part we must play with what we're given. The wind, if you like. As Rampree Krishna, who gave me the title for this devotion we're sharing, he said the following: "The winds of grace are always blowing, but you have to raise the sail." Yeah, the winds of grace are always blowing, but you have to raise the sail. And I believe it is our task to receive the wind and these waters in the right way, and to set ourselves so that we can sail. But grace doesn't do that for us. It's our task. But the wind, perhaps it's in the wind. You see, grace isn't just going to come in and save us, to take our troubles away. I don't believe that's what happens in life. To change the natural world just for us. Just look at the world, just look at our lives. It's just not the nature of existence. I believe grace works in and through us, that it comes to life in and through us when we live in a state of grace. While we need not do anything to deserve it, we must do a great deal to bring it to life, to embody it, really, if you like. As the Buddhist Joanna Macy has observed, grace happens when we act with others on behalf of our world. Grace happens when we act with others on behalf of our world. So grace exists in those spaces between our lives, and we experience it as it works through our lives, encouraging others to engage with it too. To dance. We have to do the dancing there. To dance in the spaces as the music plays. But grace won't do the dancing for us. The Unitarian and process theologian of the 20th century, Nelson Weiman, while rejecting what you might call tradition and notions of God, did believe that there was a process which he observed and it had the capacity to transform us into beings capable of doing good, that can enable us to live up to our ideals and therefore relieve us from what some have described as the meaningless despair of life. He called this process that we can engage in creative interchange. He believed that this creative interchange comes alive as individuals or groups bring new meaning to life, and that as it comes to life, the richness of the world expands and a deeper sense of integration occurs. Weiman named this grace. For him, this is what grace was. That thing that comes alive in between us. And James Luther Adams expanded on these ideas, believing that this creative power finds its richest focus when we work together to serve the divine reality and bring to birth freedom and justice in our world. He believed that God transforms us with a love that cares for the fullest good of all. That God transforms us with a love that cares for the fullest good of all. It is this then that compels us to act with it and in service, and thus to recreate grace. Grace is the starting point, but it's something that we also create. The creative interchange that Weiman was talking about. We're not passive. Grace isn't a passive thing. Grace may be the wind, but we must set our sails, and not just our sails, but sail with others too. I see a real truth in their views, in both Weiman's and Adams' view of grace. But most importantly, they help me make sense of my own experiences, of my own life, of how I have lived in a state of grace at times. So grace isn't really truly about the things we just receive. They're just given passively. We've all been given life, the ultimate free gift. Grace is about more than that, though, more than just being given these things. It's about what we do with the gift that we're freely given. Grace is what we create from what we have been given. Grace is what we bring to the table of life with this life that we've been given, that was lent to us, if you like. And what we're given and what we do with what we're given is not for us alone. The gifts we are given to share for the good of all. I was thinking of this as I talked with my writer friends the other day, and the gifts and talents that they've been given, and how these gifts and talents are suddenly coming back to life. How they're setting their sails again, but how they're coming back to life to do something wonderful in this world. I can see it already. I'm loving engaging with them around their ideas, actually. I'm excited by it. It excites me. It fills me with grace. No two people are exactly alike. We all have our gifts, our different abilities. We are all born with certain aptitudes and innate ability, each of us. We all have something to offer the world. We all have something to share with life. But they're not all the same. Thank God for that, eh? I myself have always been a communicator, but I was never an athlete. And no matter what I did, I was never going to be an athlete. As I've shared before, my mum often tells and loves to tell the tale of how I could talk, I could hold a conversation long before I could walk. It must have looked very strange, this little toddler sat on the floor talking, but I was also a late walker. I had some physical issues too. My mind, you see, is wired for communication, but also I was born with some underdeveloped nerve endings in the base of my spine. So physical activities were very difficult as a child. So I could talk long before I could walk. So when we say you've got to walk the talk, well, I couldn't do that as a baby. I could only talk and no walking. Some may say that's still the same, but I hope that's not true, actually. We're all given different gifts. Our task, I believe, is to make the most of these gifts, to enjoy them and to share them with others, thus inspiring them to make the most of what life has given to them. And this, I believe, actually is the point that the epistle Paul was making in his first letter to the Corinthians in chapter 12. Paul wrote this letter because he saw each member of the congregation at Corinth in their struggle to be the great congregational leader were trampling on one another. Each one of them wanted to possess all the good qualities, to be the great leader, to become the perfect leader, and of course to leave the others in their shadow. As a result, they appeared to be nothing like a group of people attempting to live by the image of Jesus, to follow Jesus. They were not doing so. They were trying to be the greatest, and no one can be. No one gets everything. And it's not just for us, it's for everyone. Paul taught them that the Spirit does not allow even the possibility that one person can possess all the talents. That said, if people come together in love and they live interdependently and inspire one another with their gifts, they can then create a community by combining all that we have and encouraging for each of us to lift each other higher. We can create that community for the good of all. This is the kingdom of love. This is heaven on earth. That's what it looks like. This is the idea of a spiritual religious community. You see, we all have our gifts, our talents that have been bestowed upon us. And I believe we have a responsibility to learn to use these gifts well and to recognise that there is that same spirit, and that same spirit that gives us gifts requires us to use our gifts cooperatively with those who have different gifts to us, to share in the abundance of it all. They're not to be used lightly or selfishly, neither are they to be despised or loathed. And nor should we despise or loathe the things that we're not quite as good as some are, like my physical attributes, which are not very good. I could talk long before I could walk. But if we use what we have for the benefit of all, we will inspire others to do the same, to make the most of what has been freely given then. And then by combining, we make something that's greater than the sum of its parts, because that's how community works. And I believe in community. I believe in society. I believe in the kingdom of love, here and now, where we work together, we build together, we share together. That to me is the beloved community. That's true religion, if you like. But that begins by using our gifts for the good of all. So let's be grateful for the gifts that have been bestowed upon us. Let us make the most of these aspects of our humanity that's been given to us, that's been lent to us. Let us learn to share them with one another. Let us be inspired by one another's gifts and create a true kinship of love right here, right now. And in so doing, we may well just begin to live in a state of grace. So I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more, and we can all bless. And we bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. So, some words of blessing. For the sun and the dawn, which we did not create. For the moon and the evening, which we did not make. For the food which we plant, but cannot grow. We lift up our hearts in thanks this day. And may we all know God's blessings as we live each and every day. And may we carry these blessings with us. And may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Amen.